Ticket sales at a cinema suggest that approximately 10% of people purchasing tickets do not attend the movie screening. The cinema decides to investigate the outcomes of selling more tickets than seats using a simulation with 50 trials. An initial simulation considers 10 seats and the sale of 11 tickets. 11 random numbers between 1 and 10 are generated, where 5 represents a ticket sale where the patron does not attend the movie screening. For part A, we want to use the data below to determine the number of seats filled for each simulation. So each random list represents 11 tickets. So you can see if you count up these numbers here, there's 11 in each list. So that's the 11 tickets, where any of the 5s represent a patron that doesn't turn up to fit in one of those 10 seats. So what we need to do is identify all the 5s in these lists and then work out how many people are actually attending. So in the first one, we have a 5 here, a 5 here, and a 5 here. So what that means is that 3 of the ticket sales don't actually have people attending. So of the 11 possible people that could attend, only 8 of them turn up. If we repeat that process on the next list, we can see that there's only 1 5 in that list, and that means that of the 11 tickets sold, 10 people are going to turn up. So that's an example where the cinema is at capacity. You've got exactly 10 people attending. If we do one more, you can see in this next list, we have no 5s being generated. So that means of the 11 tickets that are sold, all 11 want to turn up and see the movie. If you continue this process, you can see that there's 1 5 in here, which means 10 people attend that screening. There's no 5s in here, which means 11 people are going to turn up. In the next one, there's 2 5s, so you have 9 people turning up. Then you have 1 2 5s again, so there's 9 people that are going to turn up to see the movie. Then in this list, you can see that there are no 5s, so you have 11 people turning up. For this list, there are no 5s, so 11 people are turning up. And for the last list on this CAS screen, there are no 5s, so 11 people want to turn up. So if you want to, you can take a minute to go through all the other 4 screenshots, but this is all collated and done on the next screen. So before moving on, just one thing to have a look at is that because there's 10 numbers and 5 represent someone not turning up, that one number out of 10 possible numbers relates to this 10% of people not turning up if they purchase a ticket. So that's just a reminder there for you. So what we've done is the results of the simulation have been summarized in this table. So the number of people attending is 8, 9, 10 or 11 people can turn up. And we've got a number of trials that satisfy that. So there was 6 times when 8 people turned up, 10 times when 9 people turned up, 15 times when 10 people turned up, and 19 times when 11 people turned up if you go through all of those lists. So next we're asked to determine the probability of the theatre having spare seats. So there's going to be spare seats when only 8 people or 9 people have turned up. So there'd be 2 or 1 spare seat in either of those cases. So the probability of having spare seats is 6 plus 10 divided by the number of trials, which is 50. So that's 16 divided by 50. And as an exact decimal, that's equal to 0.32. For part 2, we're asked what is the probability of the theatre being at full capacity. So there's 10 seats that we're considering, and there's 15 outcomes in our 50 trials that led to a full capacity cinema. So therefore, the probability is 15 divided by 50, which is 0.3 as an exact decimal. Finally, we're asked to determine the probability that the theatre has more patrons than seats trying to attend. So that occurs when 11 tickets are sold and all 11 people turn up and try and sit there. So in this case, the probability is going to be 19 divided by 50, and as an exact decimal, that is 0.38. So the cinema decides that the probability of having too many patrons attend a movie screening is too high. They next decide to simulate 20 seats and the sale of 21 tickets. 100 trials were run, and the outcomes of the simulation have been summarized in the table below. So we're asked very similar questions. So we want to determine the probability of this simulation resulting in a theatre having spare seats. So now we've got 20 seats. So there's going to be spare seats if 19 people turn up, 18 people turn up, 17, 16, or 15 people turn up. So the probability is going to be 1 plus 6 plus 11 plus 24 plus 24 divided by the number of trials, which is 100. And if you add all of that up, you find that that is 0.66 as an exact decimal. So there's a 66% chance that there will be spare seats in this cinema. So for part 2, we want to find the probability that the theatre is at full capacity. So the theatre has 20 seats, so we need to look at the number of trials that resulted in 20 seats being filled. So the probability of the theatre being at full capacity is 28 outcomes resulted in 20 seats being filled out of 100, which is 0.28 as a decimal. Lastly, we're asked, what's the probability the theatre has more patrons than seats? So that occurs when you sell 21 tickets and all 21 people try to attend, and there was 6 trials that resulted in that. So the probability of having more patrons than seats is going to be 6 divided by 100, which is equal to 0.06. So that means the probability of being over capacity is a lot lower in this simulation. Finally, for the simulation above, we want to determine the average number of seats that are occupied at a movie screening. So an average is found by adding up all of the people attending all of the screenings and then dividing by the number of trials. So the average is going to be equal to 15 times 1 plus 16 times 6 plus 17 times 11 plus 18 times 24 plus 19 times 24 plus 20 times 28 plus 21 times 6, and then we divide that by the number of trials, which is 100. So if you put that in a calculator, I wouldn't expect you to do that by hand, you would find that that is equal to 18.72, which is the number of seats occupied on average when you sell 21 tickets for a 20-seat cinema.